I'm a scientist by training. I'm a molecular biologist. I work in the biotechnology industry in the patient advocacy space at the moment, but I've done research for a number of years and then worked for a patient advocacy organization for about 10 years before joining the company I'm at now. So I've been in hospitals, I've been in cancer wards, I've walked with cancer patients through their journey, but I was going in for me. And like, as I walked in and it was for me, it sort of hit me in the face that, oh, they think I have cancer. So I was going in for a regular checkup and they took blood and it came back with a high white blood count, which isn't necessarily anything to worry about, but it was unusual. So they recommended I get it checked in a couple of weeks. So I did. It could have been an infection or something. I went back in a couple of weeks and it was up a little higher still. So then they recommended that I get it tested again. And it was a little higher still. I was a little concerned too, because I had seen the white blood count go up. And the first one was a little bit high. I mean, like a little bit high. The next one was just a little bit higher still. That third one was definitely high and it was still going up, not coming back down. So he said, this doesn't look like a normal infection. You might have some sort of viral infection that you're just taking a long time to get rid of. He's like, or there's a number of other things it could be, and I just would feel better if you would see a specialist. He did not at any point say cancer. It wasn't in my head that he was thinking cancer, but I was a little concerned. I thought something was going on. I think my background got me because I've been in cancer research. So I've been in hospitals, I've been in cancer wards, I've walked with cancer patients through their journey, but I was going in for me. And like, as I walked in and it was for me, it sort of hit me in the face that, oh, they think I have cancer. I was a little surprised that it hadn't occurred to me until that moment that this is what was happening. I still was not thinking, I was thinking it was some sort of an infection, right? Like, it's a high white blood count. It's really not that big of a deal.
Describe, first of all, the wait to get to the appointment, and then second of all, how that appointment actually went.
The holidays sort of got in the way. By the time they made the referral, we had to get through the holidays and the new year and get in. So it was a good, I think, about 6 weeks between when he said you need to see a specialist and I actually got in to see the specialist, which is probably why I was not all that worried about it. They didn't seem all that worried about needing to see me very quickly. But once I saw him for the initial consultation, then there were follow-up appointments, and those took a while too, for the same reason. And it began to wear on me, I would say, right? Once it occurred to me that they thought I had cancer, I was in a hurry for them to figure out what it was. And they weren't in such a hurry, it didn't feel like.
It's a hard gap actually to reconcile, right? Because you're like, I remember for me too, it's like, hello, you're saying that I probably have cancer, or maybe you already have. There are all these things to do. How come no one else seems as
Right.
ready to do this?
We need to figure this out because I need to do something. Why are you not in more of a hurry? Yeah.
So Stephanie, when you finally get in to see the oncologist, for people who are watching this, any tests, scans, things that you'd like to talk about and the experience?
Up until the point I saw the specialist, it had just been blood tests, right? They were looking at my white blood count. He, of course, did more blood tests, but he did significantly more blood tests. I felt like perhaps they were draining me of all my blood, but as much as they took. but he also ordered a bone marrow biopsy and a CT scan, just to sort of see what was going on. He didn't order the CT scan on that first visit. That was a follow-up visit, but there were quite a few tests. And then it turns out they were drawing all the blood because not only were they doing blood tests, but they were doing a what's called a karyotype to look at my genetic markers, because that's eventually how I was diagnosed, was I had a translocation. Two of my chromosomes had flipped, and that's how they determined I had MCL. So
the bone marrow biopsy and the CT scan, any guidance for people on getting through both of those?
So the CT scan is just a long day. I don't find it particularly difficult. And everyone I've ever had has been in sort of an open unit, but you do have to be alone in a room. They give you either something to drink or sometimes an IV infusion or sometimes both, depending on what they're using as markers. And it's a radioactive marker. So you get you're alone in a room because you're suddenly radioactive. And they give you some guidance about when you go home, it sheds pretty quickly, but you have to be careful for a little while around your family. And then you have to wait for like an hour while it works its way through your body. And then they take you in for the scan. The scan itself takes like 20 minutes usually. You lay on a bed, they move you through and sort of coach you through the whole thing. I don't find that part particularly difficult, but some people don't love being in the machine. I don't like the waiting part. That's the part that gets me.
And then the bone marrow biopsy, always a favorite.
Yeah, so the bone marrow biopsy is not fun. Basically, they are taking a giant needle and putting it into the middle of your hip bone to take some of the marrow out. The marrow is what's in the middle part of your bone. It's painful, I'm not going to lie. They will give you things to help you through it. Keep moving afterwards, because if you get still, you get really stiff and sore. I learned that the hard way. They will often tell you things like Claritin or an antihistamine will help with the pain. And I've heard people say that it did. It didn't for me. So just know that not everybody reacts the same. I found Tylenol or Advil to be sufficient, but talk to them about that because it can affect other things that you might be on.
Right. No, thank you for that. We do like to stress, of course, these are very individual experiences. For other sorts of bone pain caused by other things, like I was told Claritin as well, and it did help some. So but I think what's great is just having the option, just knowing what's on the table, and just knowing expectation setting. It may or may not work for you, but at least here's some knowledge for you. So thank you for sharing that. Now to a very important topic about how you were finally diagnosed with mantle cell lymphoma. So if you could, in layman's terms, as much as possible, describe the testing that they were doing and why people should know about it, what's so important about it.
The tracer that you drink, certain cells in your body will absorb it more faster than other cells. And those are rapidly growing cells. So if you have a cancer, it will absorb it and it will show up on the scan more than your typical organs. There's a few other things that can show up, but they know what those are, and they can look at them as background noise. So that will tell them if you have, in my case, cancer in any of your lymph nodes, or maybe in your spleen, or wherever it might show up. I didn't on that first scan. Nothing showed up on the CT scan, but it's one of the things they did to try to identify exactly what was going on and how much it had spread, or how much it was through my body. The bone marrow biopsy was the same thing. They were looking at my bone marrow to see if it was infected with any sort of cancer cells. My bone marrow was showing some lymphoma cells in it. So that's how I was originally staged, with stage 4 non-Hodgkin's mantle cell lymphoma. The way they decided it was mantle cell lymphoma, I mentioned that they were looking sort of to see if it was, at first they thought it could be CML, which is chronic myelogenous leukemia, or a couple of other more common things, just because of the way it presented with me. But in the blood test that they ran, they did a karyotype and they looked at my chromosomes. So everybody has 23 pairs of chromosomes. You probably know X and Y, that's determines your sex. You have 23 other pairs as well. And mantle cell lymphoma, 2 of them trade places. And it's a specific 2. So they were looking at that. And chronic myelogenous leukemia, a different 2 trade places. So I ended up being diagnosed with mantle cell lymphoma because I had, that's called a translocation when they move. And I had the one that's typical for mantle cell lymphoma. But other than that, all I had was the high white blood count, and then it did show up in my bone marrow. So,
yeah, no, thank you for painting that more comprehensive picture of why these different tests matter, why they have to, address all these different kinds of, facets of figuring out what we're dealing with here. And so on the human level now, the personal level, they do all the science, they figure it out, they tell you. Can you recall the moment that you learned?
So it was the first time. When I went back for the results from all these tests, I was still, I guess I was in denial, maybe. I was still thinking, oh, it's probably nothing. They're just being careful. And then when he sat me down, I asked a lot of questions. So he showed me all the results and explained everything to me really well. I would advise you to take somebody with you to any of these appointments. And I'll get to that in a minute, but your brain will stop working and you need somebody there that can ask questions for you. Because when he was like, and these results tell me that you have mantle cell lymphoma, my brain clicked off. I don't know. I could not tell you. The only other thing I could tell you that he told me was do not go online and look this up. So of course, what's the first thing I did was go online and look it up. So yeah, so he told me I had mantle cell lymphoma. My brain clicked off. I remember thinking, I don't want to die. I am sure he explained to me what some treatment options and things were. I couldn't tell you what he said. I had to go back for a follow-up to sort of decide what course we were going to take. And that's the point at which I started paying attention to, oh, what are the options here?